Hello, everybody. I'm Phil Brandt, President and CEO of AIM Employers Association, and welcome to This Week at Work.
Welcome to This Week at Work, the only show to pack workplace news, practical HR solutions, and timely insights into every 30-minute episode. From the latest rulings in the courtroom to the strategies unfolding in the boardroom, and from real conversations taking place on the front lines to spotlighting what similar companies are doing about the challenges they face. This Week at Work brings you the conversations that matter most to HR professionals and business leaders like you. Brought to you by AIM Employers Association and Ogletree Deacons, live every Thursday morning. This is your opportunity to connect with their experts and ask your burning questions. So what's keeping you up at night? Let's face it together now on This Week at Work.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. Bert, holy moly. I mean, there is no slowing down this year when it comes to news and the amount of work that is coming across the desk of my desk, your desk, our employer's desk. But first, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't acknowledge the horrible tragedy just occurred out in Washington, D.C. With the helicopter and the airplane colliding and the loss of those people and their families. Just a horrible, horrible situation there.
Yeah, very, very sad, and hopefully they, it seems like they pulled four survivors out last night, but that it's turned into a recovery mission at this point. So very tragic indeed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've flown in and out of that airport countless times. I mean, there is a lot of air traffic. It is very congested. I know we don't understand exactly what happened yet, but if anything else, I hope at best it was just an accident
Yes.
and nothing more than that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agree with you on that. So with that, let's get on with our program. And I think we've got a lot to talk about today, Phil.
We do have a lot to talk about. Our employers are talking about a lot. And in fact, Bert, I just want to lead off with one burning question because I think it's a warm-up. It's a warm-up to what are people, they're scrambling with all the right intentions at this point, I think, for the most part. But let's lead with a burning question, and we'll get to lawyer on the clock because I know you have some very important things to cover as well. So here's a burning question that came in, and I like the title of this, should employers flush their restroom policy? So you can guess where this one is going. So President Trump's executive order mandates restroom use based on biological sex, conflicting with past OSHA guidance, allowing employees to use restrooms matching their gender identity. With OSHA's guidance now removed, and apparently I think they removed their guidance from the website very, very quickly, should employers handle restroom policies for employees currently in transition? It's a good question, right? This is what's happening because we went so far one way with policies and practices, and now that pendulum, as you would always say, has swung back, and now it's kind of all right, which way do I move? Employers are trying to figure it out. So you got any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, and this is gonna segue into one of my lawyer on the clock stories that I think I'll just talk about right now with respect to the burning question that was raised. And, I think right now it's still kind of employer policy, what the employer wants to do, whether a private employer wants to allow what's called gender inclusivity in their restrooms or not. There's also still state law to contend with. I think clearly when we're dealing at the federal level right now, gender inclusivity is definitely on the way out. And so it's really probably up to the employer right now, whether the employer wants to subject itself to possible claims by employees one way or the other, that by having gender inclusivity, it possibly discriminates or could constitute a form of harassment to people who, for instance, women who have biological women who now have biological men in their restrooms. Could that create a problem? Or vice versa, if you exclude biological men from biological women's restrooms, could that biological man bring a claim? And so I think right now at the federal level, that's definitely on the way out. Keep in mind state law that still exists, and I think right now it does come down to a matter of policy. The story that I was going to wrap up Lawyer in the Clock with is Meta. We all know Meta. It's Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg's company, and with his seeming, I say, slight shift to the right, his attendance at inauguration with President Trump.
And you talk about a guy that flip-flopped like immediately. I'm like, come on.
You are not kidding. So in January, he overhauled, they're saying, overhauled a variety of Meta's internal and external policies. We all know that he, quote unquote, restored free expression across his platform and changed the platform's hateful conduct policy to allow criticism of gender identity. One of the moves that he also made was the removal of women's sanitary products from men's bathrooms. And the company had previously provided non-binary and transgender employees female hygiene products in the men's bathrooms. And so there is a small group of employees at Meta who have decided to quietly protest Zuckerberg's actions, and they have been bringing in their own tampons, pads, and liners into the men's bathrooms. They also have circulated a petition to save the tampons in the men's bathrooms. So in response to that, Meta issued a letter saying that it had not been the intention of Meta leadership to make employees feel unwelcome or excluded in our offices, but at this point we do not have any plans to revisit our on-site amenities offerings. But the email did promise to share the feedback with leadership. So this is known as a quiet rebellion in Silicon Valley, and just kind of an interesting case that's, I think, really a sign of the times out there, and works well with that burning question, Phil.
Yeah, no, it does. That's a good compliment. And I think, if you're in business here and most of our people are in HR or CEOs that are listening to the plan or this program, and I mean, it is a little bit of a catch-22 in some scenarios in the risk profile that you might take on, because one side or the other might put up a struggle that could end up costing you money. And I think the best advice you can get in that scenario from ourselves is you got to enter into a personal conversation with us if you feel like your risk profile is up, so that we consider all the factors of, how long have you been practicing this? What state are you in? What's your workforce demographic look like? And what kind of risk there's all kinds of questions I think I would come up with to help somebody make a very specific decision for their workplace versus just a swooping decision that may or may not be the best risk profile decision for every employer, considering what and where they're at and how long they've been doing things.
Yeah, and I have a personal opinion on this issue, but
I'm surprised to hear that.
From a legal advice standpoint, I think that as with anything in this area of the law, and given the new administration, as we've always encouraged employers to do, tread carefully through this. And again, I think right now, my suggestion is that you deal with it as a matter of policy within the company. I don't think that having gender inclusive restrooms in a company, in a private company, is illegal. And so it really is a matter of policy at this point. But I think you can see where the trend is headed these days, and that there has been a sharp backlash. I think anytime things go too far in one direction, eventually you can expect a opposite and equal or sometimes unequal reaction in the other direction.
Yeah, and just to remind everyone, because Bert, the numbers are growing. I got a chance to look at those again for the show. It's amazing. You're becoming a little bit of a star here across the country with our viewership. But just to remind our new viewers that are always joining us, our position is going to be in the position in the eyes of the employer, right? So we both work for the employers. We want to be fair and balanced with the interpretation of the law and helping them manage their risk profiles. And that's where we're coming from on any of these topics that sometimes might feel quite personal in expression. It's really from the position of the employer and the interpretation of the law that we're trying to look at it. All right.
Good point. Good point, Phil.
There's always our friendly reminder of what we're doing. And I say that because a lot of times we get a lot of questions. People don't know this from individuals who are leaving comments for the show about this happened to me from my employer. What should I do? And we're not here advising individuals who are looking to take action against their employer, right? We're here to help the employer take a fair and balanced way forward. So just a little insight as we keep going forward, Bert. All right. Are you ready to do lawyer on the clock?
Let's do it, Phil.
Okay, Nick, pull that lever, buddy.
Curious about a case that could wreck your workplace? Lucky for you, we have a lawyer on the clock.
Phil, I kind of pride myself on making predictions, looking into that crystal ball. And, I feel like more times than not, I'm right. And now I'm going to call myself out just a little bit because on this one, I was right in the action that was taken. I was wrong on the timing.
Oh,
and
so
then,
see, this sounds like an argument with my wife right there. You're just right there, no matter what, no matter
yep.
how wrong she might be, she will find a sliver of something to say, I was right. And
Well,
that's all that matters. Yeah.
I was definitely right about the action taken, just not quite about the timing. But I also there's also some actions that were taken that I did not see coming right away, but these were taken also. And so trying to keep our focus on what matters to employers and how the new administration is going to affect employers. You'll recall that I had predicted that on day one of Trump's administration, he would fire the NLRB's General Counsel Jennifer Abruzzo. Yes. And
maybe he was preoccupied with, a number of executive orders.
Yeah. I think you're correct on that. Thank you for helping me explain my error on the timing of this. But it took a little while. It took about a week into his presidency before he fired NLRB General Counsel Jennifer Abruzzo. But what's also interesting is not only did he fire Jennifer Abruzzo, but he also fired one of the Democrat board members, NLRB board members, Gwen Wilcox. So we've talked on the program before that the NLRB and frankly, we'll talk about the EEOC today. They are by their nature political agencies. They were set up by Congress to have 5 seats. In this case, the board, 5 board members. In the case of the EEOC, 5 commissioners. And whichever party holds the White House typically gets 3 seats on the board or the EEOC. And then the minority party gets 2 seats. And there are times due to the staggered terms, the expiration of the staggered terms, that sometimes there might be, like there was leading up to the presidential election, 3 Democrat NLRB board members and 1 Republican board member. And so what Trump did was he fired Gwen Wilcox, and so that leaves 2 Democrat board members and 1 Republican board member sitting at the NLRB. This one surprised a lot of people that he actually fired Gwen Wilcox. This is, I think, the first time in the history of the NLRB that a president has fired an NLRB board member. Based on the way the board was, the composition of the board at being 3 to 1 and now down to 2 to 1. And actually, I think I have to correct that because there was a board member in December who was up for reappointment, and she did not get reappointed. So I guess by my count, there's one Democrat board member and one Republican board member. So there's not even what's called a quorum on the board for the board to make decisions right now.
I think we've seen that before, maybe even with the NLRB and not having enough of a quorum, really.
We did when it got down to 2-1 under the Obama administration, 2 Democrats and 1 Republican. There were about a year's worth of decisions that got thrown out because the courts, I think the Supreme Court said that the board did not have a quorum. But right now, again, if my math is correct, I think the board is at 1-1. Maybe it's 2-1 still, but I think it's 1-1. I think again there was a Democrat board member who got renominated in December, and her nomination failed. So it was set up that with the Democrats having 3 seats at the NLRB and the Republicans have 1, had that board member been retained in December and had Gwen Wilcox not been fired, it would have been about a year and a half into Trump's administration before he got control of the NLRB. But he has taken actions into his own hands, and by firing Gwen Wilcox, clearly he will be appointing more business-friendly members at the NLRB. And what's interesting here is that let's go back to Jennifer Abruzzo and her firing. In the history of the NLRB, no president had ever fired the NLRB's general counsel until President Biden. He fired Trump's general counsel of the NLRB on day 1 of his administration, and just recently, within the last 6 months, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals upheld that firing. That's, of course, not the Supreme Court upholding the firing, but the Fifth Circuit gave blessing to that firing. And so I do think that it'll be interesting to see if the Democrats try to mount some sort of a challenge to Abruzzo's firing. It'll of course be in contrast to what they didn't do when Peter Robb got fired by Biden. They didn't challenge that one at all. So Trump now, though, has taken it a step further. Not only did he fire the general counsel, but he's also fired an NLRB board member, Gwyneth Wilcox. So we will have to see how the board shakes up. President Trump now needs to nominate several people to fill empty seats at the NLRB. My guess is that major NLRB activity is going to slow down until he nominates people. Of course, they need to be confirmed by Congress, and so this is probably going to take just a little bit of time for this to make its way through.
Absolutely, yeah. That's interesting. A very interesting time and lots of change, like we said. What else do you have there?
And I did recall correctly that right now with Wilcox's firing, there are just 2 NLRB board members: Marvin Kaplan, that's the Republican chair, and then Democrat member David Prouty, who I believe was actually appointed by Trump. Those 2 are still on the board, but there now are 3 vacant seats. And interestingly, Wilcox has said that she is going to be suing the federal government over Trump's actions.
Surprise. All right. What else you got there, Bert?
All right. So let's talk about the EEOC. Why
not? Everyone else is talking about it. Let's talk. Yeah. Let's chat about that some.
So late Monday night, President Trump fired EEOC commissioners Charlotte Burrows and Jocelyn Samuels. Those were 2 of the EEOC's 3 Democratic appointees that were sitting on the board. Just like the NLRB, there were 3 Democrat EEOC commissioners, 1 Republican EEOC commissioner. It looked as if it was going to be, again, about a year to a year and a half due to the staggered terms that it would take for Trump to get control of the EEOC. With firing of both Burrows and Samuels, now the EEOC sits again, just like the NLRB, at 1-1. 1 Republican commissioner, 1 Democrat commissioner. President Trump also terminated EEOC General Counsel Carla Gilbride. And what's interesting is he terminated these EEOC commissioners and the NLRB commissioners for not for any sort of misconduct, but for lack of confidence that they would follow the administration's goals that the executive branch had laid out. So both Samuels and Burroughs has already retained legal counsel, and Samuels, in her own statement, said that her firing violates the law, and she's considering her legal options. So big things going on at the EEOC. In 1977, President Carter fired an EEOC board member whose term had expired, but who had anticipated staying in his role for another 60 days as the statute allowed. So there is a little bit of precedent at the EEOC side for somebody being fired by a president, but again, those circumstances were slightly different. So these are certainly going to be headed to the courts, but let's also talk about the Fifth Circuit's decision that I just mentioned relating to the NLRB upholding Jennifer Abruzzo's filing. That case was decided by the Fifth Circuit just in the last 6 months of Biden's administration. And so you see how long it takes for these cases to work their way through the legal system, even if they file challenges to these actions by President Trump, it may be too late.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of movement real quick without the agencies to guide us on the administration's proclaimed policy. So
exactly, and we've already covered my last topic on the Meta employees with the feminine hygiene projects. Their resistance to the removal of those products, their quiet protests. So I think I've covered a ton in Lawyer on the Clock, Phil.
All right, great. I can't wait till next week because I know there's going to be a lot of changes between now and then. Seeing some chat here from my friend Lane out in Indiana, and she's talking about the roundtable is going to be a lot of fun this coming month. There's no doubt about it. There's going to be a lot of conversation, Lane, in the roundtable. Look forward to seeing you and our other friends there. And I'm seeing just some other chatter just around motivating, keeping people motivated, particularly in HR with maybe a little bit of thanklessness coming from the rest of the organization. And I guess I would comment on that, I've led HR departments in large ways across the world, and I can tell you anywhere I've been in any country, it's not necessarily a department that gets a lot of credit. It's in the background, and it's running hard and working hard with a lot of smart, capable people. And it does create a lot of burnout because you don't get that appreciation. What I found, and this question kind of comes from the position of leadership, is as the leader of the HR department, then you got to be the rock to provide that. You're the one that has to keep talking and mentioning and identifying, where the excellence resides, and patting your team on the back. And I have gone on before and said to my leaders, particularly those that my department would like to hear from, hey, I need some help here. I need some help in the space of recognizing my team, helping motivate them. Here are their challenges. This is what has them down. And, a pat on the back from you as the CEO or you as the general manager would go a long way. And every time I've done that, well, I haven't done it often, but when I have done it, I've gotten some very good collaboration with the leadership, and they're not meaning to unintentionally hurt anyone's feelings or not recognize them. It's just the course of, it's not top of mind. So I think that would be a suggestion to consider. Is sometimes we have to do that. And Bert, in law firms, I know you guys get lots of pats on the back all the time, and it's a big, happy, collaborative space, but maybe you got something you want to share here.
Yeah, of course. So we deal with HR all the time in our line of work. And one of the things that makes it hard for HR is that organizations don't look at HR as a profit center, and therefore they're not adding to the bottom line of the organization. They're almost sometimes seen as like a necessary evil. And so they don't get the recognition that they deserve. And, I would suggest that HR, the top HR executives in the organization, have conversations with the employees who report to them and to the employees to whom those supervisors or top HR officials report to conversations with the presidents and the CEOs and the VPs. And those conversations should go along the lines of, we may not be a profit center to the point that we're producing revenue, but we are risk managers for this organization, and it has the exact same effect on the bottom line. When we save an organization a ton of money because we are making good decisions out there, we're managing the risk to the organization, we're preventing lawsuits, we're preventing union organization, or if you're unionized already, we're preventing grievances. All of that has the same effect as profitability of revenue. You're not spending it. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're not spending the revenue, so it has the same effect on the bottom line, and therefore really is just as important. And so it may take a little bit of dialogue and a little bit of shift in thinking, but the contributions of HR to the bottom line, you got to get people to focus on that and let those subordinate employees know that they're there to manage risk for the organization, and you manage risk for an organization by good policy, good managerial skills, and that means being there for the employees themselves, listening to the employees, giving them their day in court with the organization, so that they therefore don't think that they need to seek their day in court externally. So,
Yeah.
just some suggestions there, trying to rephrase the conversation.
Yeah, and my guess is when you look around, and I saw it too, we were just not good at recognizing people. It wasn't intentional exclusion of that. We just didn't do it. The finance department wasn't getting recognized. Maybe even the safety department or the environmental department, different from the safety department, wasn't being recognized in the same way. So, if you look around, you might be able to make it a conversation about some of the contributing organizations versus the profit centers. All right, Bert, let's move on to another question. You have time for that?
Yes.
So I know, I'm assuming you are getting as bombarded as we are with everything related around DE&I and what should I do, and what's proper today, what isn't allowed today. So I'm going to stick with a couple questions in that vein. So let's see, the EEOC drops pronouns. Should our company do the same? I mean, this has been a growing in popularity over the last 10 years. The how you identify pronouns is what we're referring to. And the statement here is the EEOC acting chair is removing the preferred pronoun app from employees' Microsoft 365 profiles. So from the best of my understanding of this, in Microsoft 365, you have an option if you want to activate pronouns or not for your organization. Since this feature displayed pronouns across Outlook and Teams, should our company take the similar action?
So Phil, it's just like that
Restroom.
gender inclusive restroom. I think right
Yeah.
now it's a matter of policy. From my perspective, I would have encouraged employers not to wade into this area in the first instance. It's irrelevant, in my opinion, to how an employee performs their job, for the work that they're doing for most companies out there. And so I wouldn't have waded into this area in the first place, because now you're having to decide whether you're going to wade out of that area. But for employers who did this, I think that right now they're in the position, it is company policy whether they want to keep that in effect or not. I think that that they need to make a decision on if they're going to address this at some point, and if they are, how they're going to exit. Anytime you take an action like this, you should probably be thinking about the long-term consequences and then the exit strategy. Right now, to sum up, It's by policy what the company wants to do. It's not illegal to have pronouns as part of the email signatures or across a Microsoft 365 profile. But I think what it does show is that there's quite a bit of backlash in this country to this movement. I do think that the movement in and of itself is likely ultimately doomed just because of the fact that the laws as they exist today, as we've talked about on this program, Title VII says you need to make employment-related decisions without regard to protected classes or categories. I believe also the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution also has something in there about that. And so employers should be mindful of that going too far and taking actions that are contrary to those laws. I think that, again, allowing this, it's not illegal to allow it, but you need to be mindful of where things stand out there in the public.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's not easy. Going to get right back to that. These are not easy questions or decisions, and they do take a conversation with some critical thinking as the impact of your organization. I got one more I want to get to here, Bert. So this one is DEI and training without privilege. Is that still allowed? Are we allowed to continue our DE&I training if it doesn't include information about systemic privilege and one race holding power over another race? Can we continue our training on harassment, discrimination, and include information about treating coworkers, vendors, customers, and other visitors to our workplace with respect, civility, and prohibit bullying? Now, I get a lot of this. What should we do about our harassment training? We still have an obligation to do legally required harassment training to provide a workplace that is free from bullying and those types of things. What we aren't wanting to do is promote any privilege in any of that. And how we promote the privilege is where I think it's almost the opposite of the unconscious bias, right? So if we're unconsciously promoting the privilege because we've been conditioned over time with using certain language, that's where I think we want to be really careful. And an example that I give in this space is very carefully how we talk about the pride we have of having a diverse workforce. Right? We can be prideful that our workforce is made up of many people and nationalities and both genders and all these things. But then to say it's a strategic advantage for us to do so and we plan to advance that strategy, that might be a little bit more risky versus we're proud of just who we are.
Yeah, so definitely we have that legal obligation to do harassment discrimination training that's disseminating our policy to everyone and educating people about our policy. So we want to keep doing that for sure. The problem with the DE&I training and the movement is that it forces employers to take into account protected characteristics. And anytime you're taking into account protected characteristics, that's going to be to the exclusion of other people's characteristics. And so that's the risk there with continuing DE&I. So the question is about being allowed to
First of all, I wouldn't call it DE&I. I mean, if I was looking to be a little bit more clear, I wouldn't say, hey, we're going to our DE&I training. I would, and I kind of have it back here on my board, I would get rid of that language of DE&I, and I talk about it more from a harassment-free workplace standpoint, a non-discriminating workplace, but not DE&I.
Well, we call it at Ogletree, we call it creating a respectful workplace. And that, I think, if you focus on creating respect in the workplace, that if you work in a respectful workplace in and of itself, then there won't be harassment, there won't be discrimination, there won't be bullying. You will have civility and people treating people properly within the workplace. Again, focusing kind of on creating that respectful workplace, right, regardless of race, nationality, age, gender, religion. You just want to respect people in the workplace, and you don't have to like them, you don't have to agree with them, but you do have to respect them.
That's absolutely right. I know that we're a little bit past our time. I do want to just let anyone listening know we are here to help, of course, Ogletree and AIM, and we partner in this space. But should you find yourself in this time of I'm just not sure what to do, that's where I want you to reach out to our solutions team. You can find that email on our address. It's simple enough to do. We are getting requests where it's like, hey, we need, and think about, we need to review what's the language in our handbook and make sure that that is clean and current with today's changes compared to where we have been in the past. What is in your employee orientations? What are your job ads saying? There's lots of things for us to look at. What even I've seen even in job descriptions where we maybe have some language in job descriptions that shouldn't be there. And AIM is there and ready to help you if you want to engage in a project, to have someone look at those things and make sure that you're on a preferred path and protect you from maybe some unrecognized mistakes that would be considered mistakes today in the way we should go forward. We're here to help you. All you have to do is reach out and we can provide you some quick resources in that space. Bert and I are going to be chatting also after the program about how we can put together maybe a program to help you, and you can join us, and we'll have more information to share on that here in the coming days. Until then, I wish everyone go out and be good to somebody. Just be respectful. That's all we're saying. Take care. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you once again for tuning in to This Week at Work. If you enjoy the show, please like it, share it, and make sure it's on your calendar. If you're an on-demand viewer, don't forget you can be part of the show by watching live at 7:30 a.m. Central every Thursday morning, when you can get your burning questions answered by using the question mark icon to the right of the player. In fact, you can ask a question now. Head over to aimea.org. Under Member Resources, you'll find This Week at Work. Click Listen Live to register for our next episode and submit a question. Or follow or subscribe wherever you get your news and entertainment. We'll see you next week when we discuss what's happening this week at work.